Michael B. Jordan stood just behind the curtain, the hum of studio lights pressing against his skin like static. The air was cold, sterile, smelling faintly of coffee gone bitter and the sharp sweetness of stage makeup. A producer's hand touched his shoulder, light, professional, rehearsed. 2 minutes, Michael. He nodded, his throat dry. Beyond the curtain, he heard laughter, polite, forced, the kind that filled time before the next spectacle. The host's voice, smooth with age, carried across the stage. And next, ladies and gentlemen, a man you all know. A man who's been called the future of Hollywood. Applause. Michael inhaled, rolled his shoulders, reminded himself to smile. But when he stepped into the light, the air changed. The host, white, mid-60s, silver hair combed with precision, rose from his chair, his grin wide but his eyes cool. Michael B. Jordan, he said, his voice dripping with showmanship. Michael shook his hand, firm but not too firm. Thank you for having me. My pleasure, the host said, sitting back. Now, I've got to say, you clean up well. Almost didn't recognize you without the boxing gloves. The audience chuckled. Michael smiled faintly. Well, I do wear other things, he said, keeping his tone light. Of course, the host said. You people always do look sharp when you try. A ripple of laughter followed, nervous, unsure. Michael felt the sound like needles beneath his skin. You people. It hung there, almost invisible, almost deniable. He smiled tighter, jaw clenching. I try my best, he said quietly. Oh, I'm sure you do. Tell me, what's it like being, a symbol for a whole community? Michael tilted his head. A symbol? Yes, the host said, grinning. Young, successful, African American. Do you feel the weight of that? I mean, a lot of folks out there think people like you have it easier now. You must feel lucky. The word lucky landed like a slap. Michael's pulse ticked at his temple. The laughter returned, hesitant, scattered. He inhaled through his nose. I wouldn't call it luck, he said, voice steady. More like work. Oh, come now, the host chuckled. Work's one thing, but opportunity, that's what I mean. The doors are open now. You just have to walk through them, right? Michael's gaze fixed on the man's eyes, blue, confident, untouched. Doors don't open by themselves, he said. Someone still has to unlock them. The audience hushed slightly. The host blinked, then smiled again, broader. Well said, he replied, but the tightness around his mouth betrayed irritation. You've always been a talker. The show continued, but every exchange became a quiet duel. Each question dipped just close enough to offense to sting, then retreated into charm. Michael could feel the weight of every camera lens, every breath from the audience, the pressure to stay calm, gracious, marketable. His hands rested on his knees, but his fingers twitched, small betrayals of the tension he swallowed. Between questions, he caught glimpses of faces in the front row, half smiles, awkward eyes, one woman looking down, uncomfortable. The laughter came too easily now, rehearsed, fragile. By the time the segment ended, Michael's smile had turned to stone. The applause echoed hollowly as he stood, shook the host's hand once more. Thank you, Michael, the man said, his tone syrupy. Always a pleasure to have someone like you here. Someone like you. Michael held his gaze for a heartbeat longer, then turned and walked off stage. Behind the curtain, the lights dimmed to a dull red, and the air felt thick with leftover heat. He exhaled slowly, his chest tightening. He wanted to say something, to call it out, to rip away the mask, but his team was already there, moving fast, all efficiency and silence. That went great, his publicist said, her voice too high. Trending within the hour. He nodded, his throat dry. Yeah. Great. In the hallway, the floor hummed under his shoes. A janitor pushed a mop cart past him, the faint scent of bleach cutting through the lingering perfume of the studio. Michael's reflection followed him in the glass walls. Impeccable suit, calm expression, eyes hollow. He didn't speak until they reached the car. When the door closed, he sat still, hands on his lap, breathing in the faint leather smell. "He said it again," he murmured finally. "Said what?" his manager asked, checking her phone. "You people." She looked up briefly, eyes flickering. "Yeah, I heard." Silence. "Don't let it get to you. It's just old school TV, you know?" "Old school?" Michael said quietly. "That's one word for it." She didn't answer. Outside, the city blurred past in streaks of gray and neon. He watched the world move but felt motionless, locked in his own body. His hands rubbed together unconsciously, the skin of his palms dry. He remembered being a kid, his mother's voice warning him to always stay calm, to never give them a reason to fear him. He'd carried that lesson into every audition, every interview, every handshake. Tonight it felt heavier than ever. When he reached his apartment, the air was warm and quiet. The faint smell of jasmine tea still lingered from the morning. He loosened his tie, tossed it onto the counter, and stood at the window, watching the city lights flicker. Down below, people moved like silent shadows, strangers, free from expectation. He pressed his forehead against the cool glass. "Lucky," he whispered, the word burning. His phone buzzed. Social media already flooded with clips. Michael B. Jordan gets real. Awkward moment on live TV. Fans defend actor after insensitive comment. He scrolled past them all, numb. The comments were divided, predictable. Some praised him for keeping his composure. Others said he was overreacting. One read, "Can't even take a joke anymore." He closed the screen. The silence in the room was almost physical, pressing against his chest. He turned on the TV, not to watch, just for sound. A commercial glowed on the screen. Perfect smiles, perfect lives. He sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees. The image of the host's face looped in his mind, that polished grin. He imagined saying what he really wanted to say, imagined the audience going quiet, the cameras catching every word. But he hadn't. He'd smiled instead. Because that's what professionalism looked like. That's what survival looked like. Later, in bed, he couldn't sleep. The city's hum seeped through the walls, soft but constant. His mind replayed every pause, every smirk, every polite chuckle. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, his anger turned to something colder, steadier, a thought that whispered no more. When morning came, the light was pale and sharp. He brewed coffee, the smell grounding him. He stood at the counter, staring at the rising steam, and felt the same stillness that comes before movement, before choice. There was no shouting, no dramatic gesture. Just breath, calm and deliberate. His phone buzzed again, an invitation for another talk show next week. He looked at it for a long moment, then typed a short reply, "I'll come. But next time, we're going to talk for real." He set the phone down, exhaled, and for the first time since last night, the air around him felt a little lighter. The weight hadn't left, but it had shifted, finding a place he could carry it. The days that followed moved like slow fire under glass. Michael went through the motions, meetings, rehearsals, public appearances, but something inside him had shifted. The studio smiles, the polite laughter, the way people's eyes darted toward him, and then away again, all of it now felt unbearably loud. Every moment carried the echo of that word, lucky, and every silence reminded him how easily dignity could be disguised as composure. His agent called twice that morning, saying the network wanted him back. The clip from the previous interview had gone viral. The host had made a statement calling it a misunderstanding. Michael read it once, twice, then closed the article. Misunderstanding was what they always called it when someone didn't want to take responsibility. He thought about saying no to the invitation, but something inside him, quiet, focused, told him this wasn't over. That night, he sat alone at his kitchen table, lights dim, the city's glow washing over his hands. He opened a notebook, one he hadn't touched in months, and began writing. Not a speech, not a plan, just words. Thoughts about silence, about what it costs to smile when you want to scream. The pen felt heavy, the page rough beneath his fingertips. He wrote until his hand cramped, until the clock showed 3 a.m., until the words blurred into shadows. When the next invitation came, he accepted. The morning of the show, the air felt sharper than before. He dressed slowly, dark suit, clean lines, no flash. His reflection in the mirror looked calm, but his pulse betrayed him. Outside, clouds hung low over the city, the kind of sky that made everything look colorless. In the car, his publicist briefed him. "It'll be different this time. They want to apologize, keep it light. Don't let it turn into another viral moment." Michael stared out the window, jaw set. "Maybe that's exactly what it needs to be." The studio looked the same. Same lights, same smell of hairspray and old coffee. But when he walked in, he felt the eyes on him. Crew members smiled, too wide, too careful. The host stood near his desk, rehearsing lines with an assistant, his laughter ringing hollow. When he saw Michael, his expression flickered for a second before snapping back to charm. "Michael, my man, glad you came back. Wouldn't miss it," Michael said evenly. They shook hands again, and this time the contact felt colder. The show started as usual, laughter timed like clockwork, the band's rhythm filling the gaps. But beneath it all, Michael could feel the tension building like an invisible current. The host smiled for the cameras. "Last time you were here, we had quite the reaction online," he said. "You stirred up some feelings." Michael leaned forward slightly. "I didn't stir them. They were already there." The host's smile faltered for half a second. "Well, sure, but social media, people love to blow things up." "They do," Michael said quietly. "But sometimes the fire starts for a reason." The audience shifted, a collective breath held. The host gave a soft laugh, trying to recover. "You're a deep thinker, Michael. Always have been." "You didn't say that last time," Michael replied, his tone calm but edged. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. For a moment, even the band seemed unsure whether to play. The host straightened in his chair, his grin strained. "Well, I might have chosen my words poorly." "You did," Michael said. "But you're not the only one. It happens everywhere. On sets, in meetings, in rooms where I'm the only one who looks like me." His voice was measured, not loud, but every word landed like a drumbeat. "People say things they don't mean to sound cruel. They just don't think they need to think." The host blinked, caught between defensiveness and the realization that this wasn't just an interview anymore. "Michael," he began, his tone softening. "I never meant, I know." Michael interrupted gently. "That's what makes it worse." The air in the room felt electric. The audience didn't clap. They just watched. Michael's heart thudded in his chest, steady now, strong. He continued, his voice quiet but clear. "It's not about one man saying something stupid. It's about how easy it is for people to laugh when someone's dignity is treated like a punchline." The host's expression faltered, and for once, he didn't know where to look. Michael leaned back, breathing evenly. "I'm not here to fight. I'm just tired of pretending it doesn't hurt." The silence stretched long enough that the producer had to signal the band to play the outro early. The audience clapped, but the applause sounded unsure, fragmented. When the cameras cut, the host turned to him, eyes tired. "You blindsided me out there," he said quietly. No, Michael replied. You just weren't listening the first time. He stood, shook the man's hand again, firm, steady, and walked off stage. Outside, the afternoon air felt different, cleaner. His team followed behind, whispering about damage control, public image, headlines. He didn't hear them. His mind was somewhere else, on the faces in the audience, the way a few people had nodded subtly, like they'd been waiting for someone to say it. The next day, the clip spread again, but this time the tone was different. Michael B. Jordan speaks out, the headlines read. Actor confronts racism with calm and power. Some praised him for his composure. Others accused him of overreacting again. But buried between the noise were messages from people who understood, the quiet kind, the real kind. Thank you for saying it. I felt that too. Now they can't pretend not to know. Michael read them in silence, feeling something shift inside him. It wasn't victory. It was something humbler, heavier. Responsibility. Days turned into weeks, and the storm of attention slowly faded. But the experience didn't. It lingered in the corners of his mind, in the pauses before he spoke, in the awareness that every word mattered. He started working on a project, something different, something that didn't hide behind fiction. A documentary. Real voices, real stories. The first time he interviewed a young actor who described the same quiet humiliations he'd felt, Michael's chest tightened. Do you ever get used to it? The actor asked him. Michael paused. No, he said softly. But you stopped letting it define you. That night, he sat on his balcony, the city humming below. The sky was washed in orange haze, the air warm. He thought about all the rooms he'd been in, all the polite laughter, the invisible weight of being safe, marketable, grateful. He thought about his mother's words again, how dignity wasn't given. It was chosen, protected, lived. The wind moved through his shirt, cool against his skin. He closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, and exhaled the last of that night's bitterness. The world outside didn't change. But something inside him had a new stillness, a quiet courage. He no longer needed to prove his worth to anyone. He just needed to keep speaking, even when his voice trembled, even when no one wanted to hear it. Because silence, he realized, was not peace, it was surrender. And he was done surrendering. Weeks later, the world had moved on, but Michael hadn't. The interviews faded, the noise of opinion quieted, and the spotlight shifted to the next scandal, the next trending name. Yet for him, something irreversible had taken root. Every morning he woke with the same steady rhythm in his chest, a pulse that wasn't anger anymore, but purpose. The documentary was halfway done now, late-night edits stretching into dawn, rooms filled with raw voices and trembling truths. Each story carried the same quiet ache, a woman who'd been told she was too articulate, a man passed over for a promotion he trained others to earn, a teenager suspended for defending himself from a joke that wasn't a joke. Michael listened to them all, sometimes with his fists clenched, sometimes with his eyes wet. He didn't interrupt, didn't correct. He let their words fill the silence until it became unbearable, then beautiful. He began speaking differently in interviews, not with restraint but with calm precision, the kind that left no room for dismissal. He didn't need to raise his voice. The truth had its own volume. One morning, his publicist called. They want you back on the Hartman Hour, she said carefully. They say he wants to make things right. Michael said nothing for a long time. The memory of that cold studio, the laughter, the eyes that refused to see him, he could still feel it in his bones. Set it up, he said finally. But on my terms. The studio agreed. This time, he arrived with no entourage, no suit. Just a black shirt, dark jeans, and a calm that felt earned, not performed. The air inside buzzed with anticipation. Everyone knew what this meant. The host, Richard Hartman, was waiting near the desk, older than before, lines deeper around his mouth. When he saw Michael, he stepped forward, hand out. "Michael," he said quietly, "thank you for giving me another chance." Michael shook his hand. "We all need one." When the cameras rolled, there was no band, no opening joke. The lights were softer, the space between them wider. "Last time we sat here," Hardman began, "I made mistakes. Things I said that I thought were harmless weren't. I watched the clip again and realized how blind I was." Michael studied him, not with anger, but with something closer to curiosity. "What made you realize?" "You," Hardman said simply. "You didn't yell. You didn't fight. You just told the truth. And it made me uncomfortable. I had to ask myself why." The audience was silent, the air thick with the weight of unspoken years. Michael leaned forward. "People think racism is about hate," he said. "Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's about comfort, about people wanting to stay blind because the truth messes with their peace." Hardman nodded slowly. "You're right. I've spent a lifetime talking, not listening." "You're listening now," Michael said. For the first time, Hardman smiled, not the polished grin of television, but something small and real. "I hope so," he said. The conversation that followed wasn't polished or rehearsed. It was halting human. Hardman asked questions, not to provoke, but to understand. Michael spoke about the quiet kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying yourself carefully in every room, about how even success can feel like a performance when it's measured against someone else's comfort. He spoke about the kids who wrote to him after that viral moment, kids who said they'd never seen someone stand up without shouting. "They thought strength meant silence," he said softly. "But dignity isn't silence. It's knowing when to speak, even when your voice shakes." When the segment ended, the studio stayed quiet for a full 10 seconds before anyone remembered to clap. As the cameras faded to black, Hardman turned to him again. "Thank you," he said, "for coming back, for not giving up on me." Michael stood, smiled faintly. "It's not about you," he said gently. "It's about the next person watching who needs to see this." Outside, the evening light was fading, the air cool and dry. Reporters were already gathering, flashes beginning to spark. But for the first time in months, he didn't care about what would be written. He'd said what he needed to say. As he walked toward the car, he saw a young production assistant lingering by the door, maybe 22, awkward, nervous. "Mr. Jordan?" she said hesitantly. "I just wanted to say, I was watching from the control room. It meant something. My brother, he deals with that kind of thing every day. Thank you." He smiled, warm and tired. "You don't need to thank me. Just keep talking." She nodded, eyes bright. He walked away, the city stretching before him, endless and humming. Later that night, in his apartment, he stood by the window again. The skyline pulsed with neon and shadow, the same as always. But it looked different now, as if some film had lifted from the air. He thought about the years he'd spent trying to fit, trying not to make anyone uncomfortable, trying to be the man they could admire without having to face what they feared. He realized now that fitting in had never been the point. Changing the room was. His phone buzzed, messages, headlines, invitations. He ignored them all. Instead, he opened the window, letting the night air spill in. The city smelled of rain and exhaust and distant food carts, ordinary and alive. Somewhere below, laughter drifted up, real laughter, not the rehearsed kind. He closed his eyes and listened. For the first time, the sound didn't sting. It reminded him that the world, though broken, was still capable of truth. Tomorrow, the noise would start again, the debates, the think pieces, the divided opinions. But tonight, in this quiet space between storms, Michael allowed himself to breathe. He thought of his mother again, her voice like a compass in his chest. "Hold your head high, son. Even when they try to make you small." He smiled, whispering into the dark, "I'm not small anymore." The clock ticked softly in the distance, marking time not as loss, but as proof of movement. He reached for his notebook, opened it to the first page, the one from that sleepless night weeks ago, and beneath his old words, he wrote a single line: "Dignity is not a reaction. It's a decision." He stared at it for a long time, then set the pen down, the ink still wet, glistening under the lamp. Outside, thunder rumbled somewhere beyond the skyline, low and slow, like a warning and a promise. He didn't flinch. He just watched, calm, unafraid, knowing that the storm, when it came, would not silence him again.